All right. It is the top of the hour, so we're going to get started. I'm seeing folks still trickling in here, so maybe I'll give it another 30 seconds or so. So hang tight if you've been here for a minute already. We're going to get started very, very soon. Number to stop ticking up over here. As happy as that makes me. All right. It's slowing down. That's a good sign that we can just kick this off and folks can continue to trickle in as they arrive. So thank you all so much for joining us on a Thursday afternoon or morning, depending on where you are, for Tech Powered Construction, the Streamlining Workflows from Field to Finance, hosted by Notify and Intuit. We've got some fantastic panel discussion to have here. Hopefully this doesn't feel like a lecture. It should feel like a discussion. Hopefully you can walk away with a few things to bring right into your practice and action quickly. And hopefully it gives you some new perspective on how tech is changing the way you interact with your clients and the way they run their business. So we can start with just some quick introductions for our panelists. I'll go last. You don't have to hear my voice too long consecutively, and we can kick it off with Tanya if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Kim. Yeah, my name is Tanya Schulte. I have been in the field of construction accounting pretty much my entire career since 1998. And after many years of working in corporate accounting departments and kind of working my way up through those and learning a lot of the ropes there, a little over 9 years ago, I founded the Profit Constructors, and we are a full service accounting and advisory firm serving specifically the trades and subcontractors. So that's really what we do, and we try to do it to the best that anybody out there does it. And about 4 or 5 years ago, a good friend of mine named Richard Ropa, who manages a group called Roundtable, asked me to start something and be the first to partner with him on doing what he started envisioning it as Roundtable Labs. So now we have quite a few groups that meet, and I actually lead the Construction Junction Roundtable. So it's a group of construction-focused accountants. Accounting and how to better serve your construction clients.
Thanks, Tanya. And I see some folks just dropping some questions in here already, which is awesome. I love to see the engagement. We will have a dedicated Q&A section at the end, so drop your questions in there. If they're relevant to the panel discussion, we may touch on them, but we'll either get to them at the end or we'll follow up with you after the presentation. One way or another, we'll get all your questions answered. And I'll kick it over to Beverly Lang now. Beverly, if you want to introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So hello, everyone. My name is Beverly Lang. I am currently with Intuit. So we're happy to co-sponsor this with Notify. I've been with Intuit about 3 years. Prior to that, though, I ran my own accounting firm. So I was in the industry for 25 years as a practice leader and did a lot with construction, have worked with Notify for a long time. And so I'm happy to be here to kind of lend that knowledge and expertise, both from the accounting side and from the practice leader side. And just wanted to call out really quick, there is a more button down at the very bottom. I want to make sure that everybody looks at that because you're going to be able to find all of our bios, all of the great resources that Cam's going to cover here shortly, and all of the additional information that you may need following up on this webinar.
Thank you. That's a great call out. I should have mentioned that. Yep. As Beverly just said, that more button down the bottom. Make sure you give that a look at some point during this presentation. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Cam Garant. I'm the head of marketing and partnerships at Notify. I've been in Notify for almost 4 years now, which is a little crazy. Based right outside Boston, and I've worked with Beverly, Tanya, Intuit extensively over the last 4 years. And on top of that, thousands and thousands of trade contractors. So I have my own unique perspective to bring to this panel. So with that, we'll dive right in. We're going to try to cover a lot. We're not going to spend a ton of time on any one subject. This way we can get through a lot of different things, and we'll kind of see where the discussion takes us. I want to make sure that we have a good full-body discussion where possible, but I don't want to belabor the point on anything that doesn't have a lot of meat to it. So really quick, I have to do my spiel. Notify, if you don't know who we are, project and field service management software for trade contractors. We'll talk about what trade contractors means in a second, but hopefully project and field service management means something to you. We're built specifically for trade contractors, right? That kind of sets us apart a little bit in this space. It means we're not for GCs, we're not for home builders, and we're not for folks who do exclusively that service work. Like you might look at like a House Call Pro or Java or Service Titan for something like that. We're really for trade contractors who do either a mix of service and project work or just project work. We integrate with basically everything Intuit's ever created in their history. That's almost not an exaggeration, including the recently released Intuit Enterprise Suite, which we're very proud of. Yeah, I'll go through a few of the unique construction features that Notify offers here at the end, but when we're done with the presentation. But just to give you a few things like AIA billing, real-time WIP reporting, managing your schedule of values, retainage, and so on. And why am I here, right? Like what does this combined solution offer? We're going to keep this construction tech agnostic, this discussion, right? I'm not going to focus too much on Notify here. We'll open it up to anything. But just for the sake of kind of setting the table here, we're talking about Intuit Enterprise Suite quite a bit. And the biggest difference that I see between Intuit Enterprise Suite and QuickBooks Online Advanced, for example, is the ability to manage multiple entities and get deeper AI-backed reporting. And so for a more mature business, a business that has just more complexity, needs more permissioning, wants to bring PMs maybe on more into the financial side of the business, Intuit Enterprise Suite is an incredibly powerful platform with an ever-expanding roster of integrated app partners. So maybe for your client that's just getting off the ground, QuickBooks Online Plus or Advanced might fit the bill. They can use projects there. But if you've got multiple entities that are codependent and you want to roll up all that reporting, Intuit Enterprise Suite is really the go-to. And just, I wasn't kidding, almost everything syncs between QuickBooks and Notify. Okay, let's get into this. So what do we mean by construction, right? I just touched on this a little bit, but trade contractors and general contractors. Sorry if this seems basic to anybody, but we just want to make sure that's super clear. General contractors oversee the entirety of a project. General contractors go out and they get subcontractors to handle specific parts of the project for them. And typically, those subcontractors are trade contractors. Trade contractors might have subs of their own, but a general contractor is always going to have a subcontractor helping them. Cool. I think that's a good enough explanation. And if you're here, you're obviously interested in how tech can help you with your construction clients. It can a lot. They're pretty far behind relative to other industries. You think about manufacturing, you think about retail and CPG and healthcare and all these other industries that have really accelerated their tech adoption over the last couple of decades. And the trades are behind, but they're catching up. They are catching up fairly quickly here. And just some quick stats here, though, like labor being the hardest to estimate and most expensive project cost for a lot of folks. This is key. This is somewhere you can help your clients. Just getting a process in place to more accurately capture that. It's complicated, right? It's complicated when you have 1099s, your own team, you have subcontracts, maybe you have prevailing wage jobs. I mean, there's all these things that can go into labor costs in construction. So nailing that down is tricky, and you can be there to help them. And 76% of contractors are experiencing data integration challenges that affect their budgets and timelines. Budgets and timelines are money for contractors, right? Both of those things are money. And so if there's two things you don't want challenges with in construction, budgets and timeline. All right, let's get into a panel discussion so you don't have to hear my voice too much longer. Let's start with how to identify gaps in your client's existing workflow. So you sit down with your construction client, you know a little bit about their business, but you want to figure out how you can help them. Before you start suggesting tools, you really need to understand how they work today. And so we're going to start with these first 3 quick points, just walking through their workflow step by step. Tell me how you work today. Tell me about a typical job, right? And the main things to look for: manual work, double entry, and delays. Delays in what? Delays in communication, delays in data passing between different parties, delays in data being inputted into a system, and delays in reviewing that data. All those things are really, really relevant to how efficient your customer is going to be on a given project. And start with the process, not the software. It's kind of what I led with, but you should never be recommending any tool, including Notify, unfortunately, unless you understand your customer's process really well. So with that, let's kick off a quick discussion about identifying gaps And we can maybe start with you, Tanya. I think that you are, the perfect person to kick us off here. What questions do you ask to get clients to walk you through how a typical job runs from first bid to closeout or even pre-bid?
Yeah, actually, we actually started a little bit of a higher level than that. We start at what is your desired outcome, right? So before we even get to asking questions around process, we start with some goals questions like where do they want their business to be in the next 5 years? Do they have growth goals? Because we want to understand that so we can make some recommendations about process. And then we do get into the aspects of asking them about process after that. And so some of the questions that we would ask in that process piece, I think you'd mentioned some of them, Cam, already, but we want to kind of hear what is the field doing? How is the field getting data back into the office? What is the back office doing when they get that data? I kind of start in the middle of the process. We will start asking them, how are they doing estimates? Is that happening in outside software? Like we'll start all the way from when someone knocks on your door and says, "Hey, we might want to do some work with you, Mr. Trade Contractor." Kind of what is your starting point and how do you go all the way to the end? But every bit of that, again, I just want to highlight, we're always asking them, well, what is the end goal, right? So like, how do you want to work with clients? Do you have an ideal client? All those kinds of things are super informative of how we can help even design a process for them if they don't have one in there. And yeah, we never start with software. And one of the main questions we always ask is, what kind of a contractor are you? Because to highlight your previous point, we have a lot of people that show up at our door that we don't do a lot of work with. We don't do a lot of work with home builders. We don't do a lot of work with remodelers. We don't do a lot of work with large commercial GCs. So one of the very first questions we want to ask them about process is, are you even, a great fit for us? And that helps us narrow down if they're a great fit for us and if they're a great fit for a certain software, because we wouldn't often put like we would never put a large commercial GC into Notify. But we have other options that we can highlight for them. So
No, I appreciate that. I don't want to say we don't want them. That sounds a little harsh, but they're not the right fit for us. And
yeah.
I think you're spot on with asking, how they do it today and what their goals are. One of the things that was really kind of stunning for me when I started at Notify, I started talking to contractors. I'd say, you can use Notify to help grow your business, and people would get all worried. I don't want to grow my business. And be like, what do you mean you don't want to grow? You're a business owner. You don't want to grow your business. And in their mind, growing their business meant more responsibility, less time with their family, more employees, more headaches. And I was like, well, do you want to just grow your profits? How's that? How does that sound? Like, no extra work, maybe less work and more profits. And that's exciting to folks. But understanding where their head is at is certainly important. And when you say like, how are you creating estimates today? That's another thing that we've adopted at Notify and have found really, really helpful for getting folks kind of off the ground. It's just like, send us your current docs that you use,
Yeah.
send us your estimates, send us takeoff docs, send us everything that you sent, your proposals. We want to understand it. It gives us a better idea how you work today. Um,
I can
cool.
answer Shane's question in Q&A live right now because I had mentioned like we wouldn't recommend, but we would not. But what I would recommend for a larger GC that also integrates with Intuit products is Red Team. That's one of our go-tos for those larger GCs. And they also integrate really well with Intuit products.
Question. All right. Let's jump to the next one here for the sake of time. Where do you often see manual processes or double entry? I don't know, Beverly, you want to jump in on this one?
Absolutely. So, manual processes and double entries are pretty common with contractors. You're going to see that it primarily focuses on what I think are three different areas. That's your documentation, your data entry, and your project management. So, again, documentation, how do they do stuff in the field? How are they getting that back to their office? And let's just be honest, a lot of them are still relying heavily on paper records and they can't. They've got to automate that stuff. That's time consuming task and they need to automate that to be able to either make their profits better or to grow their business or both. Data entry, just the manual entering of data from multiple sources, that slows things down and that could be automated with an app like Notify. So I think and then that all funnels into the project management, and inadequate project management tools and processes will lead to repetitive tasks like creating, recreating, uploading the same information multiple times in multiple places. And that's where you get your bottlenecks. So I think if they can focus on those, then those inefficiencies can be fixed with a third-party app like Notify to make things better, streamline them so that they can actually do what they love to do, which is do the actual work and get paid for the work.
Yeah, and that's a great answer. And if I could just add to it too, I'd say like it also can hamper your relationship with the client, right? Especially they're looking to you for advice. For you to give sound advice, you need fast, accurate data, right? You understand the numbers better than they do. If they're doing a lot of manual entry and you're getting, if you can only get a P&L months after a job is closed out, it's going to be really hard to react to that and help them implement new processes in their business to get them on the right track. So
Yeah,
speed is of the utmost importance.
absolutely correct. Because if they're that delayed in knowing how they did on the last job, how the heck are they gonna, bid and forecast for the next job? If they don't know where they're losing money, they're gonna keep losing money. So the faster you can have accurate data and be able to give that to the business owner and teach them how to better perform within their, day-to-day activities, the better.
Definitely. Before we go to this last question here, I don't know if I can ask Heather, if you don't mind just pulling up a quick poll for the audience. If you don't mind answering this while we jump into the next question, just to get a read of the room and help, inform the next few slides. So what type of construction clients do you primarily support? And you can choose as many as apply to your business. And while the answers for that roll in, we'll just jump to this last one really quick here. How do you keep the conversation focused on process? A lot of people come in and they're like, what do I need to do, right? And what do I need to do sometimes means like, what's the right tool? Well, I don't know the right tool for you yet, but people jump to try to start using things and taking out trials and just maybe going off on their own and buying things. How do you get all that energy controlled and focused?
I'll jump in there. I will say we have a client that we had started working with last quarter of last year. We worked with him for about 90 days, and we actually are starting to do a new service that we're calling our 90-day remodel, where we kind of come in and do some major things and give them some big wins right up front. But we're taking that 90 days to kind of assess and understand what they should do. And it was great. It was one of the first clients that we'd worked through that 90-day remodel with. And we happened to be hanging out with your team at the World of Concrete, and they're a concrete client. And they walked by the booth and they were like, "Oh, do you work with Notify?" I was like, "Yes, you should take a look." And they bought while they were at the conference, right? So it was the right time, but we had taken a full 90 days before that. And we had brought up Notify, but we'd said, let's get through all of the things that we want to clean up and that we want to renovate and that we want to do in your books. And in the meantime, let's get to know one another and understand how you guys are doing things. And it was a really great amount of time. So one of the ways that I would answer, how do we keep the conversation focused, is we just let them know we're going to focus on the things that are important to you, which is, and this is what our 90-day remodel is all about, accounts receivable. So who owes you? How's that flowing? Accounts payable, who do you owe? And how is that flowing? And cash management. We're going to focus on those three things and really get a good feel for what should be happening. And then when we understand those three things, we'll be able to guide the conversation around the right tools to use.
Awesome. And we got a lot of answers here for the poll. I just want to for the room here. So the majority of folks responded they're working with the trade contractors. So about 70% of the folks attending here. About half with GCs, a quarter with home builders, 35% remodelers, 41% with service focused contractors. That's HVAC, mechanical, plumbing, maintenance. And 10% not working with construction clients yet, but you'll be all primed to get in there and start helping folks after this. All right, let's jump into the next one. Connecting the field and office. This cannot be ignored when you think about how to help your clients. It's not just what data can you give me and what answers can I give you. You've got to think about their team. Their team is an extension of themselves, and their team is their PM, their office manager, their labor, out in the field, their subs. It's everybody they're interacting with. I mean, in some cases, you could even say who's financing the project is part of their team, right? I think The ecosystem that your client interacts with on a regular basis for one project is massive. And understanding what that looks like and their role that they play and how they're communicating with your client is crucial to helping you have control of that relationship. So we touched on this a little bit, but data lag, delayed decisions, right? We talked about that P&L that doesn't get there in time. Maybe you don't have a near real-time look at your WIP on a job, and you're overbilling or you're underbilling the client versus the work performed. You can't course correct, and budgets and timelines we talked about at the beginning, easy to fall into kind of like a spiral there on a job if it gets out of whack. And field teams feel ignored. I say this all the time, and I know, Tanya, you believe this too. Pros want to work for pros. Labor is a big problem in construction still today. The best laborers, the best project managers, they want to work for companies that have their stuff together, that have a process in place, that have a proper hiring process. Something as simple as that goes a long way. And one of these things is just staying connected between the field and the office. If you have to check your schedule with a text every Monday, it doesn't feel very professional, right? So you don't want your field teams to feel ignored. And then you want your owners and accountants to be proactive or strategic. You don't want them to be reactive. If you're reactive, you're letting the business run you, and that's not the best thing in the world. So with that, we can jump into the discussion. What types of communication breakdowns are most common with your clients between the field and the office? Tanya, you want to start us off?
Sure. I think this is a one side or the other of the pendulum swing is what we have seen. We have either come in and seen that they're mostly, to Beverly's earlier point, they're mostly using paper, so paper timesheets, paper safety logs, everything's happening in paper out in the field, and it takes a long time for that to get back to the office. The other side of that pendulum swing, though, that we have seen where there's communication breakdowns between the field and the office is that sometimes an owner or maybe even like a past advisor has advised like a very long and complicated way of doing things, a very long and complicated chart of accounts, a very long and complicated set of cost codes, whatever the case may be. And that will cause breakdown as well, right? I think that one of the things that we often try to do to help our clients is find the right tools that will help them strike a really good balance between complete lack of communication or a total like micromanaging. We have to know every penny down to the cost code. And there's 42,000 cost codes you have to pick from out in the field, and that becomes overwhelming for the field, and they just give up. And so we are always looking for the right processes and the right tools that strike the right balance between, hey, we're going to automate a lot of this. And also, we're going to ask the field to do as little as possible to get the right data back into us that's actionable data and is in the right buckets, but it's not so overwhelmingly bucketed that they just sort of throw their hands up and say, I don't know what you want me to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I mean, it's so funny how we see that play out in real life. Like we have clients that use Notify who use tools like Procore, which is a great software, right? Procore is an amazing software for the right kind of company. But they also use Notify because there are small units, small teams within that company where Procore is just such overkill. And it's not designed for small businesses. It's not a consumer grade software, which is what I sometimes call Notify. And so if you don't have folks in the field using your software, it's not useful. There's no data coming back if the folks in the field won't use it. When a contractor connects their field team, project manager, and accounting function, what new opportunities open up? Beverly, I don't know if you want to kick this one up.
I will definitely take that. So there are so many. So when you can get everyone on the same page, you've got real-time cost savings. By integrating all those, everyone knows what's going on. They know where they're missing the mark, where potential overruns are, and proactive adjustments. So you get a real-time cost savings. You get improved budget management. Again, if you can limit how many times they're having to do the exact same thing, to receive clear and updated feedback from the team allows you to work against that budget. So you get better budget management, which leads to accurate financial reporting, which is what we all want. Integrated data ensures accurate financial reporting. And then that way we can provide insights. We can give them profitability, cash flow, overall trends and performances, those KPIs that those owners want to see. We're going to be able to do that. And most importantly, I think, is the streamlined billing and payment process. We want to make sure we get paid on time. So those are some great opportunities for improvement when you connect your accounting and your field and your PM.
Yeah, I think everybody from a consumer perspective probably has a story of a contractor comes, does some work at your home maybe, and you never see a bill, or you see a bill, 9 months later in your mailbox, just shoved in there, something like that. And you think about it, like you want to pay folks for work they do, right? But on the other side of it, if you have a business to run and you're not collecting for 9 months on maybe like a net 30 invoice, what does cash flow look like? And how does that cash flow support you buying materials for new projects? I mean, there's things like that are very easy to slip out of the hands of a busy business owner, especially someone who's just starting to ramp up. So making sure that all the gears are turning together and getting back to the accountant is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Before we get to this last question, once again, I'm just going to open up a poll to the audience real quick. So Heather, if you want to kick that next poll off, that'd be fantastic. And I've gotten a lot of questions about Notify, which is great. I appreciate those. I'm gonna follow up with everybody on Notify specific questions after the presentation, if that's okay. Keep them coming. I'd love to hear them, but I'm gonna try to keep this kind of, like I said, software agnostic. It's not just supposed to be about Notify specifically. All right, so the second question here, what is your client's primary work type? Are they doing projects, kind of short-term dispatch work, what we call service work? Maintenance work would be that too, right? If you have a contract, but you're going back on a recurring basis to do that work, and a mix. If you're not sure, that's a good answer as well. Maybe this is the spark to go find out. All right, while folks answer that, what's the difference in financial visibility when job costing specifically is updated in real time instead of weekly or monthly? I think I'll take this one if that's okay. So if there is one core competency of Notify, I'm going to break the rule I just set, but it is job costing, really granular job costing, breaking things down by phase of the project and breaking each phase down by labor, materials, equipment, subs, and then miscellaneous costs is how we do it. When you have real-time job costing, number one, you can get almost a real-time WIP report. As long as that job costing is tied to work performed somewhere in the platform. And so if you've overbilled or underbilled on the jobs that are being performed, and you can kind of cover the work you've done. You don't want to be overbilling, you don't want to be underbilling. You want to keep WIP as close to zero as possible, and you really want a tool that does that for you. One of the other things it helps you do is course correct, right? There are ways to course correct on a project, especially a project with a long timeline. You can save yourself, you can catch back up, but go back to that comment about spiraling. If you find out your material costs are pacing way over budget, but you only find out 3 weeks after it's already started to way overpace budget, you're gonna have a really hard time catching back up. Or maybe a change order didn't get logged, and instead someone just started buying materials for that change order. Right. And now all those things are getting logged as job costs, but you don't see them until a month later. Well, where are those? You're going to have a hard time going back in time and submitting that change order, right? Real-time job costs and somebody who's watching those job costs are a great way to understand not only if you're going to pace to budget and what your margin is going to be on a job and how that's going to affect your cash flow, but also it's a good early warning signal that something's wrong, something's out of whack in the operations of a project. So that's my 2 cents and what I've seen and from Notify customers, even working on larger commercial jobs. But Tanya or Beverly, I don't know if you have something you wanted to add.
No, I think what you said, Kim, is spot on. And it's one of the reasons why early on I pushed for even though there was a lot of really excellent WIP data, I always want that like WIP report where we can pull that down at a moment's notice. So was super grateful when that got introduced a few years back. Because that's the most important piece of this, right? Like it is so easy, to your point, Cam, of what you said earlier, when these smaller contractors are ramping up, and they start signing bigger and bigger contracts, it becomes very easy in the cash flow cycle there to start robbing Peter to pay Paul. To start taking money from one project that just came in from one project and should, be watched and earmarked and used to pay for that project and use it to pay for something else, right? And so It's super, super important to have that real-time visibility about what's happening on each job, what the cash is for, and to your point of what you said, is there something operationally that's going wrong on that job? Let's get out ahead of that. Let's get the right change orders in place. Let's do all of the right things right now. If we're waiting for 2 months down the road to get that P&L for their job, that opportunity to get that CO is long gone.
Definitely. We've got our poll results here too. So I'm just gonna let everybody know the majority of our audience here is has clients doing project-based work, so long-term projects, usually contract-based. Only 2% that are doing exclusively service work, that kind of dispatch or maintenance recurring work, which is pretty small. And about 40% doing a mix of both. So that's an interesting mix. Maybe not what I would have expected. Let's keep cruising along here. Key tech solutions. Before we get into the discussion here, I just want to give an example of what this can look like. Again, Notify is the example here. It's not what you have to use. It's probably not the right fit if your client is a home builder or a big GC, as we already mentioned, right? But you look at the QuickBooks logo here on the right. Think of Intuit, Enterprise Suite, or QuickBooks Online as the financial engine for your client's business. It's your business level management, all the top level stuff, your cash flow, your HR, your payroll, your overhead expenses, all that kind of stuff. That stuff should be happening in Intuit products. Where it can be useful to have an additional project management tool like a Notify or a Buildertrend or a Jobber is when your client needs deeper functionality, but you still need that deeper functionality in the project management or team management side of things. And you still need that data to flow back in near real time to QuickBooks. And maybe you need to give them project financials in real time back in that project management platform, right? That's where these two things can really work together in sync, and the sum becomes more than the parts. So you can think of Notify or Buildertrend or JobTread or any of those tools as your job level or your project level management and reporting tools. So projects happen in one tool, the business level decisions, reporting, all that stuff happens on the Intuit side. Cool. Stating the obvious a little bit here, and we kind of said this at the beginning with leading with process, but you can't make these decisions in a vacuum. So how do you evaluate whether a client needs a construction-specific platform or if a more general tool like Intuit Enterprise Suite alone is going to meet their needs? And in some cases, it does. Beverly, you want to take a crack at this one?
So it's really just about, kind of like Tanya talked about at the beginning, where do they want to end up? Where are they at now and where do they want to be? And can we do what they want to do and accomplish and grow without a third-party app? Typically in the construction industry, I'm going to say that's a no. I think Notify, having that built in with QBO, is going to be a game changer for any contractor, whether they're the small mom and pop or whether they're a bigger, conglomerate and, have a lot of employees. I think you bring a ton of knowledge and wealth of information into and allowing them to control their projects at different levels that QBO just does not do.
Tanya, I don't know if you have an opinion on this one yet. I'll try to stay out of it. I have a horse in the race here, so I won't.
I do. What Beverly said made a lot of sense. And honestly, I, a decade ago was preaching that we could move our QuickBooks Online, clients over to the cloud because of, pieces of the software that were out there like Notify, right? And so I was one of the early adopters of QBO in the space and one of the early folks championing let's move to the cloud. For one thing, I wanted to work from home. So that made sense to me. But I really did feel like there was so much real-time availability of data that made so much sense to move all of this to the cloud. So I've been championing that for a long time. And as we're making this sort of transition where I feel like, and this is just my opinion, we had sort of like a dichotomy between you could have QuickBooks Online, which had like just kind of enough for a small business, or you could still kind of stay out there with QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise, right? I think we're making that transition now to where IES is going to fill in that space. And so I think I've seen a little bit of IES. I've kind of played around in it a little bit, and I've seen a lot of the AI tools, especially. I think the big difference and where this is going to start to come into play is, do they need a lot more on that project management, the dispatch, that kind of thing? I think this is, again, maybe I'm just being redundant and saying what Beverly said, but like, do they need those tools? And if that can be integrated directly in with the job costing, then yes, let's continue to use something like Notify or Red Team or Jobber, and pull a builder trend. Let's pull those tools in because that's going to add in a project management piece that, frankly, I don't think IES wants to build, right? And so it's just a matter of what do they need? So going back to what are your goals? Where do you want to get to? And how much project management, dispatch, outside data management tools do you need that IES just it's not that's not what they're trying to build.
Yeah, let me just go back and say I love IES. Intuit Enterprise Suite is a fantastic platform. It's something that we've needed for a long time, and Intuit has really hit the mark with that. However, that being said, it's still fundamentally your GL, your accounting. We are really good at the accounting part. We are not so good at the inventory or the, project have come a long way in IES. They're a ton better than they were in online, but we're still, from a construction standpoint, to get that job costing and that additional level that you need, I still feel coupled with something like Notify or Jobber or Procore or Buildertrend, it just takes it to the next level.
Agreed.
Thank you. And that's a really good segue into that next question. Actually, the question that everybody loves is kind of just this rapid fire. Like, what are the tools folks should go look at? We can keep this one short, but maybe we just say, Tanya, like for your home builders, what are the tools that you recommend? And maybe for your GCs, your trades,
Yeah,
we can just go like quick
sure.
rapid fire on this one.
Absolutely. Top home builder tools that I recommend are adaptive.build and JobTread. I love both of those on the home builder side. GC, as I already mentioned, Red Team is my favorite go-to. Procore is in there. Procore is great. We have a client on Procore right now. And they're really killing it on there. And then obviously for trade contractors, especially those that are doing both service work and new construction, Notify is our go-to tool every time.
And Beverly, on your side.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit different being in the Intuit role. I work with the large accounting firms, and what I see typically across the board are going to be the bigger clients. And that's where we're using Procore, Builders Trend, Notify. Those are the three big ones that I see.
Cool. And I'll say just, from our experience, if you get on a call with somebody in Notify and you want to take a run through our platform, and you are not the right fit, we'll let you know and we'll point you in the right direction. We're friends with other tech solutions in this space. And we think JobTrend's a great tool, Buildertrend, as Tanya said, a great tool. On the service side, if you have clients get kind of exclusively doing that dispatch work, Jobber, Service Titan, House Call Pro. If you have interior design clients, House is a great tool for that. There's a lot out there. If people just need time tracking, something like a busy, there's a lot of specialized point solution tools out there too. I'm happy to be that resource, even if Notify is not the right fit for your client. You're always welcome to hit me up.
Yeah, and I'll
All
just
right.
kind of throw one other thing out there about that, Cam. I think this is where to tie like the beginning of this whole presentation to back to here. This is where it's really super important when someone calls you and says, "Hey, we're in construction. What would you recommend?" To ask the right questions before you go down the path of saying, "Oh, well, I think you should sign up for Notify," because it might not be the best fit.
Yeah. Yep. And then everybody's time's wasted.
Yeah, exactly. And then they feel frustrated because you didn't even ask the right questions.
All right, I'm keeping an eye on the time here. I'm going to jump down to this last one. For clients juggling both service and project work, what are the challenges in using multiple tools for that? We just talked about Service Titan being a great tool, Jobber being a great tool for folks who just do service work, right? Buildertrend is great if you're just doing home builds, for example. For folks that do both, what is not the right tool, but what's the right process or tech stack composition? Beverly, you want to take a crack at that one?
Go ahead.
I think it's going to depend on, they may do both, but one is going to be predominant. And I think that's typically what I see win out when it comes to the tech stack. And the other just kind of makes do with what they have. You do see some clients that try to bring in a system or a tech stack for both, and that becomes redundant. And not sustainable and certainly not scalable. So I think you have to look at, again, keep going back to what Tanya said to begin in the beginning. Where do they want their company to end up? What is their end goal? Do they want to grow? Do they want to be more profitable? Do they want to work less? What are they trying to accomplish? And looking at their current processes, their current workflows, and the tech stack that they currently have, what do they need to add or possibly even take away? And it's usually take away to streamline those processes to make it something that is doable.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So we start to find the right tools for our clients. And now we start to look at what those tools can do for us. We'll talk about automation and efficiency. And there's some examples on the left-hand side of what I'm talking about when I say automation and efficiency. So time entries in the field that automatically find their way to payroll. Bills, POs, expenses that can be submitted without a gatekeeper, without one person at a laptop or a desktop punching them in with a shoebox of receipts or something like that, right? These are the kind of things that are going to speed up everyone's day-to-day, and that are going to give you that proactivity instead of reactivity we talked about a few slides back. So where have you seen automation save clients the most time or prevent the biggest mistakes? And I think we'll probably get outside the realm here of just construction software, right? I think you can think about tools like Bill.com and things of that nature too that save folks tons of time on the automation side.
You don't say Bill.com. We talk about QuickBooks Bill Pay. That's going to save them time. Using the ecosystem of Intuit and using our bill pay, our payroll, our merchant services. Why add on third-party apps when it's already in the ecosystem? So that's a savings of time. Automating, using the AI that's both in QBO and IES to automate some of those mundane things like your bank feeds. We have a great AI bank feed now that reads the metadata and helps you determine where those charges need to go. The automation of dropping your documents in and it entering the bills for you, uploading pictures or notes from your estimate to get that estimate created. So I think there's efficiencies both on the QBO or IES side, as well as learning Notify and knowing all the tricks of what Notify or any other provider has, so that you utilize the system to its fullest capabilities. That's going to be your biggest time savings, which is going to give you more money in the bank and happier employees.
You were like really preaching my language over there, Beverly, at the beginning. I am constantly saying to clients, let's get away from using anything that we could do in either Notify or QuickBooks, if that's the tech stack that we're like. Why would we, for instance, create budgets outside of Notify if we don't have to? Now, there may be a very valid reason. We can walk through that. Then we'll go back to the whole goals thing. We have to understand those things. But for the most part, if I can do something in QuickBooks or Notify, let's do it. And if there's a very valid reason for why we shouldn't be doing it there, then we can have those conversations. But I'm always trying to keep everything in one very streamlined, very simple ecosystem, and not trying to use spreadsheets over here and paper timesheets over here and, a time tracking app alone, standalone over here that isn't QuickBooks time, but I want to pull that time into QuickBooks. Like, why am I doing that? So I'm always wanting to understand what that workflow is, and then to understand, can it be done in a tool that we're already using? And if we have the right tech stack, let's pull it into that tool as soon as possible.
Absolutely. It cuts down on human error and gives you better results. And ultimately, it cuts down the time that it takes the employees to do it, which gives them time to do bigger and better things.
I'm going to throw this out there. It's a shameless plug, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's kind of cool and it just happened. We had a client that it's the same client I was talking about that bought Notify at World of Concrete. They were doing paper timesheets all the way up to that. They were taking the paper timesheets, putting them into Excel, sending it to us, trying to, and then we were doing some manual data entry into QuickBooks to get them paid. When they got onto Notify, all their guys now are tracking time in the field. That time gets approved by a project manager, then it gets a final approval by the owner of the company. It's a smaller company, and then it's all pushed into QuickBooks. And all we have to do is go, yep, those numbers are right. Move a little overtime around. That's one thing we can talk about later, IES folks. But move a little overtime around and it's done. I click a button and it's done. And this is the cool part. It took us from about 4.5 to 5 hours of working back and forth with them to get time straightened out every week to now we can do payroll in about 45 minutes for them. It's huge savings of time.
Awesome. That's a great anecdote. I'm gonna drop maybe Tanya, I don't even know if you know this yet. I think you probably do, but I'm gonna drop a sneak peek that's gonna shake this up too. We talk about time savings for manual tasks. One of the biggest things that folks, especially in commercial construction, have to deal with is prevailing wage. If your client works in a space where prevailing wage is prevalent, they're doing a lot of manual data entry. It's really tough to track. For those who don't know, prevailing wage. Government or either a federal project or a municipal project that sort of imposes labor rates for different work performed. I like that word, for work performed on folks who bid on that job. So I win the job. I can't pay my team what I would typically pay them. I have to pay them this rate depending on the specific kind of work they're doing and the day they're doing it. Getting all that information is really, really hard. If you don't do it right, there are penalties. And processing payroll is really difficult if you're not collecting it in a streamlined way. Notify, we have not officially launched it to the public yet, but we do have available our prevailing wage feature. And if you reach out to me, we can get you set up with that on Notify and give you a sneak peek. We're super excited because we don't really think anybody has what we have here at this point. And it's going to offer massive, massive time savings for anybody who needs to capture that data for job costing purposes or payroll purposes. We don't do payroll processing ourselves, but we can recommend you to folks who do. But getting that data in the system is a big deal.
I will throw out another shameless plug there. If you're an accountant that likes being involved in helping shape these types of things, one of the founders of Notify was in my Construction Junction Roundtable yesterday asking us for some help on getting that up and running. So Construction Junction Roundtable is the place to be if you want to help inform where some of these apps are going.
Totally. All right, last one I want to ask here, and maybe Heather, if you don't mind pulling up the third poll while we do this, how do you sell this whole idea to clients, right? Because small business owners are busy, and to say like, yep, this is going to save you time in the long run, but there's an upfront cost of your time, there's an upfront cost of money, of your sanity. How do you sell this whole idea to your client?
Do you want me to take that one?
Sure.
It's so much tied to, and it's not to beat a dead horse, but really I can't give good advice if I don't know what they want. So it's all tied to their goals and it's all tied to, what is their goal? So, Cam, you mentioned earlier, and I think this is very true for this space in particular, there are quite a few smaller trades contractors who don't necessarily want to grow in size, right? And so knowing that right up front can help me understand what is going to be the driving motivators for helping affect change for their business. So if they don't want to grow in size or have extra employees, then I don't need to be spending a whole lot of time talking to them about, when you get to 40 employees, how are you going to be keeping time more efficiently? But if they do, that's going to be a driving motivator that's going to inform how we should build out an automation system. So I think it's everything about it is tied to having really good conversations at the beginning of any engagement to find out what are their goals, what drives them, what motivates them, and help them find the right tools that really fit the bill for what they want.
Yeah, well said. As I move on here, I'm just going to say that the one that we found, it's probably more relevant to us as a software company, but it's just meeting folks where they are, right? Like if you'd rather just hop on a phone call with us, we'll do that. Text chat, we'll do that. Email, we'll do that. You need somebody on a call with you at 2 a.m., we'll do that. Like we will meet you where you are. You are busy. We're here to serve. It's a little thing that goes a long way to helping folks get kind of across the line with these things. Most of our audience here, about a quarter, is exclusively using QuickBooks with little to no project integration, and about a quarter there fully integrated. 17% multiple disconnected tools, and 10% not sure what they use yet. Good question to ask them. All right, I'm going to just sneak ahead here and see. We've got 2 more panel discussion slides. I'm going to keep them very quick, if that's okay with the audience and with the panel here, just so we leave time for Q&A. So improving communication and collaboration. Let's talk a little bit more about Enterprise Suite, just because this is the new tool here. Beverly, maybe you could speak to this one. What are some IES specific collaboration tactics or tools that you've seen folks be particularly effective with early on in the life of the product?
So, as you know, IES was only launched in September, September 17th. We had our official launch on November the 14th. So we're slow to get off the ground. We've got about 1,000 people, I believe, in IES currently. I think the collaboration again with Notify has been fantastic. Construction has been the biggest lift we have seen thus far. I think where IES is a game changer is with those that have multiple companies, the intercompany transactions, the being able to do consolidated reporting, bill allocation with the click of a button. I think the AI tools that are there for KPI benchmarking and the reporting that is available is just, it's out of the water. It's just fantastic. So I think some of the collaboration with Notify, and we've seen some people use it with Builders Trend, has been great for the construction side of the house.
Yeah, and I'll just say the phrase we always use is that your team can work where they're comfortable, right? Your team in the field, they want to be using a tool built for projects in the field. And that's what
Correct.
Notify is built for. It's built for projects, right? Your team in the office doesn't want to use that tool. They want to use a tool that's built for the office, especially if they're on the financial side. And for that, they can use QuickBooks, or if it's project-based work they're doing in the office, they can use Notify in that part of the platform. So finding the right tool for the right person and making sure that they're all speaking to each other in real time. We sometimes joke that we're like a marriage counselor between an accountant and their client. All that, like that game of telephone you play, that all gets eliminated when you have these two tools working together. Let's launch that last poll, Heather, because we're gonna run out of time here with this discussion if we don't. And while we do that, we can jump into the last discussion here. Data-driven decision making. Tanya, I know you love this topic. Using your WIP reporting, using past P&Ls, past budgets, and how accurate you were in those budgets. What kind of job level data is the most useful when assessing project performance? And how do you ensure you get that early and accurately? And just for the sake of time, we'll wrap it into the last one here too. How do you get that data with a QBO or an IES?
For sure, job costing. It's, especially if we're talking like the niche that we serve, they're not used to doing a lot of job costing. But we want to just start getting them down that path and helping them understand how to get things in the right place and how to actually use the data that's there to assess the project performance. I think all too often, the client is thinking of like, I just need that WIP report because the bonding agent asked for it, or I just need that WIP report because the IRS is saying I have to provide it, or whatever the case may be. But it's really our goal to help them understand how to use all of that data. And in terms of like, how do we ensure that it's captured early and accurately? Again, that goes back to this whole thing about like helping them establish goals and metrics for the field and making sure that we're asking the field and even often the back office, like what we're asking them to do is reasonable, and that they can reasonably be expected to keep up with the amount of data that we're asking them to enter. And so we ask a lot of questions up front around like, who do you have in the office and how much time are they going to have to do these things? And okay, let's build a system around your goals coupled with who you have to be able to do that.
Awesome. Well, so that last poll, we just have our results right here. If I can find them. There we go. Great. So most clients struggling with job costing and profitability tracking. No great surprise to me there. I think that's what we hear all the time. And then communication. Great.
Hope I
Yeah,
didn't
this gives
influence that poll, but
maybe. All right. Last thing before we get to these questions, we only have a few minutes here, but how to start. We'll share this presentation after the fact, and I promise if we don't get to your question right now, because we're going to run a little bit over, I will follow up with you, or the relevant panelists will follow up with you by email. You can book time with Notify if you want to see the platform. If you're an accountant that doesn't want to see Notify for yourself, you just want to refer a client and have them talk to us, you can do that as well. You can become a certified advisor like Tanya, who is maybe the shining example of that. Learn more about IES with that link there. And you can follow the Profit Constructors and Tanya on LinkedIn. Go to the Profit Constructors website, easy to find. Join the Construction Junction Roundtable. Tons and tons and tons of great resources on construction accounting and construction finance you're not going to find anywhere else. All right, so with that, let's get to the Q&A. Let's see here. I'm going to just go through lots and lots of questions that are Notify specific, and I promise I will get to all of those after the fact. All right, here we go. Why is a tool like Notify not a great fit for GCs? I'll let that one pass as the one we can answer here maybe. So GCs have a very different workflow than trade contractors who are not acting as GCs, and that's an important distinction to make. We sometimes joke that every subcontractor eventually becomes a GC. You know, on big projects, subs have their own subs to handle different kinds of specialty work. Managing your subcontractors, accepting payment from your subcontractors through a platform, things like coordinating with architects. That's the sort of stuff you find in a tool like a Procore that Notify just doesn't facilitate because it's not built for that workflow. Inversely, things like managing your own full-time W-2 labor in the field, capturing their fully loaded labor burden with things like benefits and insurance in a really easy way, AIA billing and pay apps and tracking your schedule of values and retainage. Those are all things that Notify accommodates. So that's why we're not a great fit for GCs. And the reason we're not a great fit for service-only businesses is really just because there are service-only tools out there that go deeper than we do there. If your client does a mix, I'll go to bat and say we're the best, but service only, there are better tools and we can point you in that direction. Let's see what else we got here. For Tanya, what app do you recommend for remodelers or very small GCs? Red Team appears to be for larger GCs.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say we do have a couple of really small GCs on Notify. But again, for those remodelers or that small GC space, I would look into adaptive.build or JobTread. Those are really great if for those and that smaller kind of contractor in those space. In that space. I can't even talk. In that space where they're remodeling or doing home building and they're smaller GCs, like I said, JobTread or adaptive.build would be my first go-tos. Adaptive.build is great because if your clients are doing a lot of cost plus projects, and there's just a lot of work tied up on the back end and gathering data and information of all the backup for those cost plus draws. Adaptive handles that brilliantly. And sorry, Beverly, but they also do bill pay. But again, JobTread is a great solution also. Really love those guys over there.
I just want to reiterate, I am an Intuit girl, have always been an Intuit girl, but more importantly, I'm about right fitting the customer. So we are not always the solution, but 90% of the time we are.
Well said. We have time for a couple more here, and this is a great one. We talked about collections. How do you suggest your clients accept payment in a way that easily integrates with tools like QuickBooks and construction apps?
I would say Intuit Payments. That's the easiest way. It's automated. You send out your invoice. It's going to put a link on there. You can pick and choose if they can do it via ACH or if they are going to pay by credit card. And then once that customer makes that payment, it automatically feeds back into QBO, posts the payment against the open AR, and then puts it in the undeposited funds for you to deposit or match to your bank feed. So it automates it for you.
I agree all of that. Yeah. So yeah. Third, I think that's great. There's a lot of different apps that are out there, but again, I'm back to what I said earlier. I want to use everything that's in the ecosystem I already have, and if it's available to me and useful tool, I'm going to always point clients in that direction. And the other thing that I am just going to throw out there in this space in particular, I don't know about any of you that are listening on this call right now, but I have a lot of clients that are having a harder and harder and harder time accepting paper checks. The banks just absolutely hate paper checks right now. So as often as possible, if we can accept EFTs or ACH or QuickBooks Bill Pay, whatever we can do to avoid paper check, I am recommending.
I agree.
And I'll say Notify has a, oh, sorry, go ahead, Beverly.
I was just going to say, we've done some studies and 74% of payments are paid in less than 30 days when it's sent with a payment link because it's so easy. They open up the bill, they look at it, they're like, yep, that's right. Oh, I can pay. Let me just go ahead and do that. So it's done. They pay and you get your money faster.
Definitely. And I'll just plug that Notify has a direct integration with QuickBooks Payments. So you can invoice out of Notify, include that QB Payments link directly on your invoices from Notify and accept ACH or credit card. And sneaky other unannounced thing, where legal in your client's jurisdiction, we do offer a convenience fee for credit card processing because for a lot of contractors, that loss of fee on their margin, that credit card fee is the sticking point. So we can help with that. And for folks who are doing that dispatch work, you can do mobile invoicing with Notify as well. Invoice and get paid before you're back in the truck. We are at time. I'm sorry because I should have left a little bit more time here for questions, but I promise we'll get to all of them. And if we didn't get to it or you didn't get a chance to ask it, you can reply to the follow-up email or email me at cam@notify.com. Thank you so much for giving us your time here on a beautiful in Boston, a beautiful Thursday afternoon. I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate all the panelists who took the time to be here with me today, and Intuit for facilitating this. So thank you all, and have a wonderful afternoon and weekend.
Thank you, Cam.
Thanks, everyone.